A very good afternoon to all of you, most respected Honorable Governor of Arunachal Pradesh and Chair of today's conference, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to Lok Bhavan, Itanagar, for this international conference on ballot access by political parties and candidates. We are organizing this conference in collaboration with Rajiv Gandhi University under the aegis of the India International Institute of Democracy and Election Management as a part of India's chairship of the Council of Member States of International IDEA. I want to stress that today's conference holds particular significance for Arunachal Pradesh, how the state came to be entrusted with this theme, the work undertaken over the past several months, and what we hope to achieve through today's deliberations. All this will be shared by the host of today's conference. And for that, it is my privilege to invite Chief Electoral Officer of Arunachal Pradesh, Sir Pawan Kumar Sen, IAS, Sir Eastern Indian Administrative Service Officer with over 18 years of distinguished public service. He has served in several important positions at the center, including Niti Aayog and Rashtrapati Bhavan, and has also held senior administrative positions at Goa. Sir is currently holding the charges of Commissioner Health and Family Welfare and Commissioner to the Governor, apart from being the Chief Electoral Officer of Arunachal Pradesh. Sir, may I request you to deliver the welcome address?
The Honorable Governor of Arunachal Pradesh and Chair of today's conference, distinguished representative of election management bodies from different countries, Director General and officers of IIDM, Chief Electoral Officers from the states and union territories of India, our co-host, the Vice Chancellor of Rajiv Gandhi University, eminent academicians, election practitioners, researchers, invited guests, and all participants joining us here and virtually. A warm welcome to all of you. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you to this international conference on ballot access by political parties and candidates. As part of India's chairship of Council of Member States of International IDEA, the Election Commission of India through IIDM entrusted each of the 36 Chief Electoral Officers across the country with a thematic theme for comparative research and international documentation. Arunachal Pradesh was assigned the theme Ballot Access by Political Parties and Candidates. Our task was not simply to prepare a report. We were expected to study the subject from an international perspective, examine practice across different electoral systems, document relevant case studies, and identify lessons that could contribute to a larger body of comparative knowledge. Our election practitioners will present the findings emerging from the research. Our academic experts will respond to the issues raised and bring in broader and comparative perspective. And through the open discussion, we hope to hear from election management bodies, chief electoral officers, election practitioners, researchers, and other participants. The purpose is not merely to present our work, but to improve it through dialogue. We are deeply honored that Honorable Governor is chairing today's conference throughout its proceedings. Sir, your presence and guidance lend great significance to this exercise. With this, I once again extend a warm welcome to each one of you. We look forward to your observations, questions, and suggestions for a meaningful exchange of ideas. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, sir. Today's conference truly marks the culmination of months of research and collaborations, and we now look forward to testing and strengthening this work through today's deliberations. With that, we shall now begin the PowerPoint presentation. Our first thematic presentation is on Trust and Democratic Resilience, Electoral Management and Political Representation. To begin, it is my pleasure to invite Madam Yashashwani B., IAS, Deputy Commissioner of East Kameng District. Madam is a 2020 batch officer of Akhmud Cadre and an engineering graduate. She has served in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands and Goa and currently leads the administration of East Kameng District. Ma'am, we look forward to your presentation.
Honorable Governor Sir, and all the delegates present here, a very good afternoon. Today I'll be speaking on the theme Trust and Democratic Resilience, Electoral Management and Political Representation, with a major focus on the theme assigned to our state, Arunachal Pradesh, that is ballot access by political parties and candidates. So through this presentation, we explore how ballot access creates trust and how trust strengthens democratic resilience and how election management can transform constitutional rights into meaningful political representation. Ballot access is often understood only as the right to vote, but however in reality it has two important dimensions. The first one is every eligible citizen should be able to vote freely. And the second one, and the topic that is assigned to our state, is every eligible citizen or a political group should have a fair opportunity to contest elections. Ballot access matters for three reasons. First one, it creates equal opportunity both for voter and as well as for the contestant to contest freely on a level playing field. Second, it creates democratic integrity. When equal opportunity is given through transparent mechanisms of electoral management, the institutions gain credibility and trust in the public eye. Third, it creates resilient democracies. By providing equal opportunity, again through a transparent management, a stable and a constitutional democracy is ensured. Democracy, therefore, begins not with counting votes, but with ensuring equal access to the ballot. Once access is ensured, the next requirement is trust. We would have all studied a law when it intersects with public trust, only then it gains legitimacy. Trust is the public belief that elections are conducted fairly, impartially, and transparently. Trust has two essential components. The first is confidence that every citizen can vote freely and every eligible candidate can contest on a level playing field. The second one is the confidence that the electoral process conducted by the state or the election management body is fair, neutral, transparent, inclusive, and accountable. Once trust is ensured and confidence is built, citizens trust the entire process of elections. They accept the outcomes without any fights or resistance. Political competitions are peaceful, and EMBs, election management bodies, gain credibility. Trust, therefore, converts ballot access and participation into legitimacy. Trust alone is not enough. Democracy must also be resilient. Democratic resilience refers to the capacity of the institutions or the election management bodies to preserve the people's mandate while managing political change and dynamics. It protects democratic continuity through constitutional mechanisms. This includes managing coalition governments, regulating defection through constitutional provisions, resolving disputes peacefully, and ensuring continuity of governance. A resilient democracy does not prevent political change. Rather, it ensures that change is within constitutional rules and statutory norms rather than through instability or institutional breakdown. Trust gives legitimacy to election. Resilience protects that legitimacy over the time. Both trust and democratic resilience ultimately depend upon the effective election management. That is, election management bodies conduct free, fair, and credible elections. This management of EMBs is across three stages. Before election, this involves accurate creation of electoral rolls, voter registration, candidate nomination, party registration, and creating voter awareness. During elections, it is to ensure neutrality, impartiality, secrecy of ballot, transparency, and equal treatment of all stakeholders. After election, transparent counting, declaration of results, dispute resolution, and preservation of records for accountability. Every administrative action contributes to either public trust or public suspicion. Election management therefore acts as the bridge between constitutional rights and democratic legitimacy. The role of the state is not to determine electoral outcomes, rather the role of the state is to guarantee a fair contest. This slide captures the central argument of our presentation. Election management creates conditions for trust and democratic resilience when it is neutral, transparent, accountable, and inclusive. Trust ensures that citizens believe and have confidence in the entire process of elections. And democratic resilience is protecting the mandate of the people over time. So when trust and democratic resilience are created by the election management body, it leads to political representation which is legitimate and also reflects the people's will in governance, ultimately leading to a stable and constitutional democracy which is peaceful, accountable, and enduring. This is a continuous virtuous cycle. Weakness at any stage affects every stage that follows. Despite constitutional guarantees, there are various challenges that we face in ballot access. Some of them are legal and procedural, such as complex nomination rules, documentation requirements. Others are economic, where campaign finance and unequal resources affect meaningful competition. Administrative capacity and constraints also hamper our ballot access. Information gaps, intimidation, pressure, violence, exclusion of marginalized groups are also some of the reasons which prevent genuine participation of candidates to participate in the elections. Addressing these gaps is essential for ensuring equal political opportunity and ballot access. So, as we have already mentioned, this was the theme assigned to the state of Arunachal Pradesh, ballot access by political parties and candidates, wherein we had created a group of officers and professors along with a research assistant, and we studied almost more than 87 jurisdictions across the world to understand how ballot access is ensured in different democracies, in different election management bodies, and finally we've considered 6 strands for the entire electoral life cycle to understand ballot access. The 6 strands are mentioned in this slide. They cover not just the administrative neutrality and MCC, Model Code of Conduct, but also voter registration and polling integrity. They also cover candidate accountability, dispute enforcement, ballot access by parties, nomination, scrutiny, and candidate selection, along with alliance transparency and anti-defection. So under each of these strands, 6 strands, there's again sub-strands which have been created. And for each of the sub-strands, we've also ensured to basically give it a try to develop standards in 3 different categories. A minimum standard, a benchmark standard, or an aspirational standard. On these aspects, my colleagues will deliberate in the upcoming presentations. So rather than viewing this ballot access only as a voting day arrangement, this framework considers every institutional process that affects political participation. And these 6 strands provide a comprehensive framework for evaluating whether election systems genuinely ensure equal participation or not. To conclude, ballot access is much more than facilitating voting. It is about ensuring equal political opportunity, not just for voters, but also for the candidates and the political parties who want to participate in elections. Trust transforms access into legitimacy. Democratic resilience protects that legitimacy through constitutional governance. Election management provides institutional foundation upon which trust and democratic resilience depend. Ultimately, the quality of democracy is determined not merely by whether elections are conducted, but by whether every eligible citizen can participate, every eligible political actor can compete fairly, and every legitimately expressed mandate is respected. A democracy is strongest when ballot access is inclusive, institutions are trusted, and constitutional process remain resilient. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. for their detailed overview of ballot access from the perspective of an election practitioner. You have explained how fair ballot access builds trust, strengthens political representation, and makes democracy more resilient. Ma'am, you have also highlighted the importance of state neutrality, the challenges to equal access, and the 6 strands of standards. There is certainly much here to discuss further. For that, we would continue with the same topic, trust and democratic resilience, and turn to Professor Chandrachud Singh. Sir is a professor of political science at Hindu College, University of Delhi. He holds a doctoral degree from the University of Birmingham, United Kingdom, and is a distinguished academic whose work spans political theory, cosmopolitanism, human rights, and democratic institutions. He has been involved in several important research projects in India and abroad. He is also a well-known political analyst and, yes, a familiar face on leading television news channels. Sir, we would be delighted to hear your reflection on Madam's presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Honorable Governor, sir, and the galaxy of esteemed practitioners and experts present here and joining us in the cyberspace. I must humbly begin by saying that this is really a great privilege for me and my colleagues to be working with this wonderful set of practitioners, ably under the guidance of the CEO. I think Yashaswini has already set the broad contours of why trust is a very important parameter of democratic resilience. And trust is something which cannot be assumed to be there only because we are a democracy, or only because there are democracies. It does not mean that trust is automatically present. It's a continuous process, and that in continuum it has to be renewed and worked out relentlessly so that the democratic legitimacy is strengthened. Ideally, to quote medicine, if men were angels, they would not need a government. But the fact is, humans are humans and therefore will need a government. And if we need a government, the government also must have acceptance. Now, the acceptance of the government can be worked out, and as we know, there are so many ways in which that acceptance can be worked out. Primarily, it could be by sheer force, which is what we call authoritarianism. It could also be by mere ideological manipulations, which could also be called totalitarianism. But democracy, the genuinity of democracy lies in the fact that it's every day, every moment, every second that legitimacy is worked out. And that legitimacy then not only strengthens trust, but actually the trust also strengthens that legitimacy, and that is an ongoing process. Any mishap in that, any casualty in that, any casualness in that, can lead to democratic backsliding. And we've seen throughout the world, I would not name these countries, there are countries in the world which are slipping down. On the contrary, a country like ours has been very resilient in terms of maintaining democracy. Just to give you an example, if you look to the post-colonial democracies, there's no democracy that can match up to our standards of resilience. And in the morning today, when I just was thinking about that resilience, which can of course be highlighted in very different ways, I was struck by a comparison that we can draw with the United Kingdom. If we look to the House of Commons, the average number of elections that United Kingdom had from 1951, so comparing 1952 when we had the first election, so 1951 to 1979, the UK had 7 more elections than they should have had, and from 2017 to 2024, they've had 3 more elections than they should have had, which means that there were democratic instability. despite the fact that a lot of things which is said about democracy were present there. Now contrast that with India. We may not have had those things which are supposedly preconditions of democracy in theory, and yet we've been more resilient than even advanced democracies of the world. And that is why democracy and the consent management through electoral management bodies like the election commissions become very, very important. As we speak, I'm told a special intensive review is going on in this state as well. Now, the SIR is part of the demand side of electoral management, but there's a supply side. And it is in this supply side that the thematic that has been given to Arunachal Pradesh is being worked out. How do we ensure ballot access? What does that mean? Does it mean just ensuring level playing field? We need to understand who can compete. Can everyone compete? Who needs to be restricted? What are the grounds on which restrictions can be rationally imposed? What kind of restrictions are they have to be? What procedural and substantive equality needs to be brought in ensuring that every political group, every independent candidate has equal level playing field? And I think this is this which needs to be worked out, and that is what ballot access needs to be deliberated upon. Needless to say, it cannot be worked out unless the EMBs, the electoral management bodies, are insulated from a lot of executive exercises. And for that, the autonomy of ECs, the election commissions, is a must. But more than the autonomy, in fact, to maintain autonomy, it's also important that the electoral management bodies have gear up for their competence. And that competence, I'm very happy to see this galaxy of academicians and experts and practitioners here, because that competence requires bringing together the kind of team from the civil society, from the academia, from the practitioners from the field, and it is from there that competence has to be made so that the autonomy and so that the neutrality, which is an antidote to democratic backsliding, can be maintained. I think Yashaswini has already highlighted, and I'll not get into that. But we also need to look around the practices that's going on, particularly in democracies, and some of the democracies should be looked into. Just to give you an example, when it comes to registration of political parties, now we do have the classification. We have national parties, we do have regional parties, we also have registered political parties. Now, and there are nuances which I'm sure everybody knows and can be detailed a bit later during discussion of what is a national party, what makes a national party, what makes a national party slip down to a regional party, what makes a regional party slip down to a registered political party. How do we encourage candidates who have independent, who are independent candidates to also gear up to that system where they can equally compete with established political parties? Because just as in the criminal system, we cannot allow any innocent man to be punished. Similarly, we need ballot access requires that every person, irrespective within the qualified systems of law, can have adequate level playing field when it comes to contesting. So therefore, the practices, particularly 4 or 5 states that I can talk about, and I think practitioners here can look into, the UK, Australia, South Africa, Germany. Now, I also understand that it cannot be replicated much in the same way as they operated there, given the fact that there's a contextual difference. But some good practices could be looked into in terms of registration of, UK doesn't have a 3-fold or 4-fold classification of registration of political parties. To what extent can they be brought down, and what extent they could be kind of innovated and adapted to suit the needs of our system is something which the state of Arunachal Pradesh and my wonderful friends can look into. Similarly, it's not just about who gets to contest, once we have had the system going on, it's also about ensuring the independence and neutrality of the commission. And not just that, even post-elections, the system of anti-defection, which is now much in use, is anti-defection something which goes along with the system of free choice? To what extent can they be restricted? Are certain things, or to what extent the free choices can be regulated, is also that ballot access needs to look into. Model code of conduct. When does the model code of conduct kick in? Remember, there's a day. What happens before the day and what happens after the day? How many days are good enough to say that this is enough and now the model kicks in? So the model code of conduct needs to be looked at. Is it a moral conduct, or can that be codified strictly to give teeth to the understanding that, well, no means no, so that nobody can bypass it come what may? So that model code of conduct, campaign expenditure, these are also things which actually strengthen those whole understanding of ballot access. I think Yashaswini has already done a wonderful job in terms of putting all those slides together. And I'm sure Kunal and colleagues will take things from here. But when we look at ballot access and when we look at electoral trust and making democracies more resilient, we need to look at it as a process which is in continuation, which is in continuum. We need to think about pre-election integrity. As I said, enhancing the capabilities, and it's a wonderful opportunity to highlight. I don't know, and I can't recall of a situation where the Honorable Election Commission may have invited stakeholders from different parts of life within India and abroad to come up to produce such a report which will be produced, and I'm very hopeful that it would happen. More importantly, and then this is some of the theorists in the West have been working on it, I think this resilience needs to be monitored, and it needs to be continuously monitored, not just by public officials alone, but there has to be mechanisms of academics, civil society, networks, foundations, think tanks, which need to come together to monitor the extent to which resilience continues. Maybe an indexing of resilience parameters could be of help. But more importantly, developing feedback loop between monitoring, public awareness, electoral accountability is what is the engine of democratic resilience. Lastly, building networks internationally of democratic alliances, of democratic practitioners could also be of much use in that context. So I will not get more into that details, and we can continue while we can have question and answer sessions if by the permission of Honorable Governor, sir, we can have those question sessions. But as I said, democracy may not have been the best, but there's no better thing that has been developed further or till date for management of humans affairs, the social affairs. And therefore, for democracy to survive, for democracies to live well, and for democracies to prosper, I think resilience needs to be built in and mechanisms need to be built in, because it's a continuous process. Every second that passes by only makes it further resilient. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Your energetic deliberations and remarks have reminded us how closely political representation is linked to trust and democratic resilience. You have also talked about how MCC can strengthen democratic process, and I think the comparisons and example you brought from different countries like UK and different regions have certainly given us much to think about. Moving forward, our next thematic presentation is on diagnosing and institutionalizing electoral resilience from democratic stress point to model standards. To take us through the practitioner's perspective, it is my pleasure to invite Sir Kunal Yadav, IAS, a 2021 batch officer of Ahmedabad, and Deputy Commissioner of Longding District. Sir has served in different administrative capacities in Arunachal Pradesh and currently leads the administration of Longding District. He is also a recipient of the Chief Minister's Award for Excellence in Public Administration 2025. Sir, we look forward to your presentation.
Honorable Governor and all of the esteemed members of the House, a very warm good afternoon to you all. Today I will be speaking on diagnosing and institutionalization of electoral resilience. And while I want to start, I want to put a small data point in front of you all. According to International IDEA, nearly 1 election in 3 worldwide have been followed by protests or unrest. And nearly 1 in 5, which is 20%, ends with a losing candidate refusing to concede their position. This is the world we live in right now, and this is the world for which this report has been prepared, and we all are part of this discussion here today to come up with standards that are transferable, replicable, and most importantly, sustainable over coming periods of decades. Further moving upon, firstly, I would like to bring to your notice what exactly is a democratic stress point and what exactly is electoral resilience. So electoral resilience is not merely formulation of a law. It needs the law to stand the time. Unless it stands time, that law is not fulfilling, it is not reasonable, and it is not practicable. A legally compliant election can still fail its purpose because it is tilted in one way or the other. And erosion is always gradual and will never be sudden. We have seen across the world examples of various democracies sliding year by year, day by day into a non-democratic setup. And hence we need to ask ourselves if we are electoral resilient first, and secondly, what kind of standards leads to that resilience. Moving forward, a stress point is simply a rule which can appear to be formal, but it is expensive, maybe too much technological, maybe selective, maybe discriminating based on gender, caste, any barrier for that matter. And these vulnerabilities most often hide in plain sight. Not to name any particular country, but recently a country in our neighborhood saw a large amount of protests and uproar. The crux when found out was that the younger generation was upset with the sitting dispensation, and there it began with a very small social media campaign called Nepo Kids, where the Gen Z population of that country was putting up images of their side of the story versus the kids of the political dispensation, and they were showing the contrast as to how their lives are compared to the elite ones or better ones to say. And this is how the campaign began, and it led to the downfall of the entire government. And after that, a party came into power which was nearly only 4 years old, defeating all other parties. And this is what specifically is a stress point. Stress point is not something which will be completely visible to us all every time. We have to look for the nuances in a democracy and how our country and its citizens are responding to the institutions and the laws that we have built to undertake the formation of our democracies. Moving forward, our topic is basically ballot access and how it acts as a lens for electoral resilience. Ballot access has many strands which we will be discussing further. Why ballot access is a lens for electoral resilience, so as to say? Because it touches almost everything. It touches party formation, it touches administrative disclosures, post-election conduct, administrative neutrality, and it reflects the health of the entire democratic process. So every stage of an election related to ballot access tells us how our system is performing. Moving forward, these are these 6 strengths: administrative neutrality, registration and polling, accountability and remedy, party access, nomination and appeal, coalitions and mandate. Moving forward, we will be deliberating upon each one of these strengths, starting with administrative neutrality and leveling the field. Right from the beginning, all the election management bodies should be administrative neutral, because it is the basic requirement for a free and fair election. We have also quoted examples of some countries, starting with our own. Canada and Australia, they have caretaker conventions which restricts executive decisions without needing a statute at all. Whereas in Mexico, there are statutory restrictions on government propaganda to address communication itself as a campaign instrument. All these examples basically address the same problem or the same virtue. They are all working towards the same goal, which is the functionaries which ensure that elections are held should be neutral. The level playing field, as Professor was speaking earlier, should be completely level and not tilted towards any dispensation, whether current or upcoming one. Moving forward, next, once the level playing field is established, neutrality can protect the campaign period itself. The next part, which is about voter registration and polling integrity, protects the accuracy of who actually gets to walk in a polling station and vote on the particular day. So while we talk about voting, etc., again, I'll come back to the same country I was quoting earlier. One of the very first concrete acts of that country was passing of an presidential ordinance where they revised the entire electoral roll. That was the crux of the problem. The entire electoral roll was completely revised, and the young voters who had been left out were made to register. Who were working in Gulf countries were made to vote from abroad using technology. The country which could not think about it for so many years did it in a span of 6 months, which leads us to the crux that voters are the backbone of any democracies. And correct roll and clean count, if it is there, forms the basis, but is not enough if there is nobody to be held accountable afterwards. Moving us to our next strand, which is candidate accountability, dispute resolution and enforcement. With regards to candidate accountability in terms of disclosure, in terms of information that the voter has about candidate, India's candidate affidavits has somehow worked by merging accountability with the voter's right to information, which is an outcome of ADR litigation. However, in case of India, when we talk about India's post-election petitions, it cannot undo wrongful exclusion, whereas other countries provide a better picture. And I have quoted those countries there in the slide. Brazil, Mexico, South Africa, they offer standing electoral courts which function all round the year and hence can prevent wrongful exclusion even before the polling day, which is not the case in our country. Fourth strand of our discussion today will be party formation and registration and recognition. Different countries follow different mechanisms for this. India has a performance-linked recognition. However, we have a weak link, which is our deregistration part. In Australia, there is public objection windows and there is a periodic review also. So it is an accountable and contestable register. In Germany, parties treated as constitutionally significant they need to have internal democracies, they need to have financial transparency. So the regulations differ for different countries. We will try to break the standards, as my colleague earlier was talking about, into 3 standards that we will be moving forward. The next strand for us is nomination scrutiny and right to appeal, which is essentially during any elections part. So basically, when we talk about nomination scrutiny and right to appeal, India's case is one of the strongest because Section 36 of Representation of People's Act says that a nomination should not be rejected for a defect that is not of substantial character. While doing the comparative studies across so many countries, we realized that this is the strongest transferable safeguards identified in the whole review, and it is an example. And somehow, as the professor was speaking, that we are a very resilient democracy and we have stood test of the time. I feel this is one of the core points on which we have been able to come to the place where we are today. Moving ahead, candidate selection. This is actually the choice before the choice. If parties will not send candidates in front of us, we only have the, as voter, we only have the choice in front of us, whosoever party sends to be contesting. So basically, how to regulate an internal party democracy? Is the party authoritarian inside? Do they have their own systems to select a candidate? How much they are accountable for their own systems is basically covered in this strand. Different countries have been mentioned here for all to see. They all have their different perspectives as to how to do that. However, we need to move towards a system where voter should have a choice before the choice has actually happened. This is the core theme about this strand. And in the same continuation of the strand, this is about alliance, transparency, coalitions and anti-defection. Lot of issues have come up in our own country as well as others, where weak coalitions lead to weak governments, leads to weak decisions sometimes, and it affects overall development as well as other parameters of the country. So pre-poll alliances, we have given the example of Netherlands here. The coalition disclosure of New Zealand requires a disclosure of confidence and supply agreements, and they are public documents, which is very different from other countries. So these are few examples we can look as model standards while going forward. We have made a standards matrix here. The transferability, high transferability means these things can be incorporated in any country's EMBs or their laws or statutes. So the transferability is high, and these are few of the standard components. I will not be reading out each one of them. We all can see. And primary cases are the countries which follow these standards components and are an example of how they are working well for those particular democracies, and can be checked by and can be copied, and maybe not exactly, they can change it, they can modify it to suit to their contextual requirement. However, this is the standard component we should all aim for. These are some of the medium high and medium rating standard components. The ratings have been done on the basis of how easy it is to implement all of these, how much efforts it requires for a standard components to be incorporated. Moving ahead, as we had decided that model standards will be divided into 3 strands: minimum guarantees, recommended practices and aspirational benchmarks. For the minimum guarantees, we have chosen that ballot access rules should be objective, public, non-discriminatory and reasonable. Registration and nomination decisions must be reasoned and reviewable before election has happened. Minor technical defect should not lead to exclusion from the ballot, for which India is a very good example, as we spoke. Deposit, signature and proposal requirements must not be unreasonable barriers. It is also one of the high transferability rating standard component. Timely notice of defects and procedure to candidates and party. Pre-poll remedy must be available where exclusion from the ballot is at stake, and this is where India's case is not the ideal one. EMBs must act impartially and transparently. Digital and AI systems affecting access must preserve human oversight, audit trails and corrections. While just to emphasize on this digital and AI system, in Ireland's election in 2025, there was a deep fake video which was circulated, and in that video, one of the presidential candidates was shown to be withdrawing from the race, even when he was not. It was a deep fake video. It was taken down, and he went to win the election also, but it shows how the digital world is shaping the election part as well. Afterwards, the UK's EMB, I'm not sure if it is a law or statute, they brought in a rule where every such video will be reviewed by the technology, but however, the final decision will rest with a human. And in this also, I want to emphasize that ultimately we need to have a person behind every decision that is taken to hold him or her accountable for anything that happens when it comes to democratic processes. These are some of the recommended practices. These can be suited to your democracy, to anyone's democracy, and can be changed and contextualized according to their own standards. And further, these are the aspirational benchmarks. We need to move towards digital dashboards which can track everything. We need AI readiness protocols, like I quoted some examples on how the world is changing, and we will need laws to specifically tackle that. We need candidate and party disclosure databases. We need radical transparency tools, letting citizens understand and challenge electoral decisions. We need coalition and alliance disclosure platforms which are absent. Independent tribunal, court mechanisms for access and anti-defection disputes. And while we today think and deliberate upon what the model standards should be, and on one of these 6 strands that we have discussed, I am sure nobody has all the answers, neither do I, and I hope that while we can only attempt to try to devise something that will work for most of the countries or all of the countries, I hope this will serve as some contribution to this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your comprehensive presentation. From the stress points that can quietly weaken electoral system, sir, you have actually led us to the larger question of how these vulnerabilities can be identified early and translated into institutional safeguard. We certainly look forward to revisiting some of these points and the practices recommended by your research during the discussion session. Now, for an academic perspective on these ideas, we come to Professor Rohit Trivedi. Sir is a professor of organizational behavior and human resource management at IIM Shillong. Sir is trained as an organizational psychologist, and his work spans organizational change, institutional design, and resilience, with extensive experience in governance and public system reform. Sir, we look forward to your perspectives on the issues raised, diagnosing and institutionalizing electoral resilience. Sir, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Honorable Governor, thank you very much. It's a privilege to be here and also contribute. The team, entire team of CEO Arunachal has done a commendable job of collating and analyzing the size of data which they did. And of course, I'm required to make comments on Mr. Yadav's presentation, that it is not just a routine compliance review, it is a diagnostic exercise. And by treating ballot access not as a single nomination form, but as a 6-strand chain from administrative neutrality and registration through accountability and party access to nomination appeal and the protection of the mandate itself. The work reads the health of the entire democratic process through one carefully chosen lens. The cross-case standard matrix and the graded architecture of minimum guarantees, recommended practices, and aspirational benchmarks give that diagnosis something rare, a usable, transferable shape. This is careful, patient, institutional work, and it does deserve recognition. But I want to dwell for a moment on the sentence that opens the whole exercise. that integrity alone no longer suffices. That single line is why these matters and why it is so important to go beyond. We are trained to ask whether an election was legal. The deeper lesson of this study is that a perfectly legal election can still quietly fail its democratic purpose if the competitive field was tilted in advance through a welfare announcement, an official communication, an unreviewed disqualification, an appeal that arrives a day too late. Erosion rarely announces itself. It does not cancel elections. It bends them. And a rule that looks perfectly neutral on paper can operate as a very real barrier for a smaller party, an independent or a woman candidate or a first-time contestant. That is why we must go beyond the provisions to the institution and beyond a single template of democracy to the many institutional and cultural forms through which different societies actually organize voice, participation, and legitimacy. Because the assumption being made here is that we are doing this exercise, not only this conference, but also the entire initiative by the Election Commission, IIIDM, on the Arunachal CEO, is that we are in this process of learning and documenting that learning, which intermittently gives us an opportunity to also reflect. To go beyond is not to diminish the law. It is to take the law seriously enough to ask whether it works for everyone in practice, whether it is tested. That is precisely what this exercise does. It moves us away. It moves us from asking what the rules permit to asking how well our institutions are built to be fair. For that and for the care and conviction behind it, my sincere appreciation and warm congratulations to the entire CEO Arunachal team. But before I go further, I want to make my position very clear. That I'm not a political scientist in the conventional sense. I come to this as a student of institutions, of how they become and earn legitimacy, resist change and transform over time. That makes comparison both valuable and delicate, because no two institutions are ever truly the same. In my own language, this touches mimetic isomorphism, the tendency of institutions to borrow and imitate one another. Such learning is valuable only with caution. Choose the parameters carelessly, and we compare unlike things and reach conclusions that are elegant but misleading. I learned this early. One of my first assignments was with CEO Delhi way back, working to bring first-time voters to the poll. Some of us would remember 2018. To make things part in this celebration of democracy feel fashionable, the then CEO, Dr. Satbir Silas, who initiated me into this institutional work, was clear that we could only imagine our country's growth once its youth were engaged. And what we later saw in a different country, in a different form, my friend described. Technology mediating a demand for justice stayed with me as a student. So I see the present exercise under the guidance of IIIDM and the Chief CEO Arunachal Pradesh not as a compilation of practices, but as an epistemic one. Its responsible basis is institutional justice. Seen this way, what follows is not really a talk about ballot access. It is a talk about how democratic institutions organize fairness. So let us begin where the law begins. When we ask who may appear on a ballot, we reach for the law, the language of the law, what the rules permit. But that is not the whole question. From an organizational behavior perspective, ballot access is a question of organizational justice. And justice is never only about outcomes. Distributive justice asks who actually gets access. Procedural justice asks whether the rules are clear, reasoned, and appealable. And interactional justice asks whether candidates are treated with honesty and respect when a decision goes against them. A rejected candidate may suffer on all three fronts: the exclusion itself, an opaque process, and a refusal delivered without reason. Procedure matters most of all because of what we might call the fair process effect. People accept even unfavorable decisions when they believe the process was fair. An EMB that gives advance notice, a genuine chance to correct errors, reasoned decisions, and a pre-poll appeal is not merely administering well, it is manufacturing democratic legitimacy. And yet, the same rule lands differently on different position people. India's 25,000 rupee deposit, for example, is trivial for a national party and could be prohibitive for a genuine independent candidate. Canada's 100 signatures are easy in a city and hard across a vast northern riding. Formal neutrality is not the same as fair distribution. But fairness is not the absence of barriers either. Deposits or thresholds also guard against fragmentation that produces unstable governments. The real test is proportionality. Is each barrier justified, applied consistently, and no heavier than its aims requires? The question is not simply, what do the rules say? It is, how fairly does the system distribute democratic opportunity, and how fairly does it treat those who seek it? There is also an assumption beneath almost all comparisons that while institutions differ, the meaning of democracy stays constant. Institutions never float free of society. They gain legitimacy only when embedded in histories and values. Democracy is not only a constitutional arrangement, it is a cultural institution as well. Our default model, the autonomous individual and the adversarial parties, grew from the European Enlightenment. But India shows another path. Its democratic practice actually did not begin in 1950. Indian thought long recognized collective governance through sabhas, samitis, shrenis, guilds, resting on a relational rather than a purely individual idea of political life, and balancing rights with dharma. Reciprocal obligation. So an EMB's task is not only to administer elections, but to translate constitutional universality into diverse settings. The goal of comparison is not replication, but translation. This is why I say the study of democracy itself needs decolonizing, not as a rejection, but as an epistemic expansion. We equate democracy with elections, but elections are only one mechanism of collective choice. The deeper ideals lie in voice, participation, deliberation, and belongingness. My own understanding got shaped when I reached Meghalaya, and have been living there for the last 20 years, where the Khasi Darbars still govern much of the community life. Studying them humbled me. Many strive to ensure that every member is heard before a decision is taken, valuing consensus over aggregation and legitimacy through inclusion rather than numerical victory. Let me be careful. I'm not claiming these are democratic in the same sense as modern constitutional democracy. They carry their own hierarchies and exclusions as well. My claim is more modest. They embody democratic values, participation, deliberation, reciprocity, and inclusion through a different institutional language. Nothing made this clearer than Meghalaya's living root bridges. A bridge cannot be built by one generation. It takes decades of collective care, surviving on cooperation rather than ownership, and on institutions that transmit responsibility across generations. It is not only an engineering feat, it is an evidence of institutional culture. An African philosophy of Ubuntu, I am because we are, expresses a comparable instinct. Community precedes isolated individualism, and voice derives from belongingness. To decolonize democracy, then, is simply to widen the archive from which democratic knowledge is drawn. To stop asking which democracy is more developed and start asking what pathways societies have built to organize legitimacy. Across real election management bodies, the same questions are answered very differently. Indonesia builds procedural justice into its architecture with two bodies. We all know that. In India and South Africa, independence is constitutionally entrenched. In Germany, the returning officer is a minister's appointee, and etc. Institutional theory tells us why. Under pressure, organizations copy whatever counts as best practice. The fashionable rule, the disclosure portal, for the legitimacy it confers, not the capacity to run it. When the form is adopted but the practice never changes, we call it decoupling. The provisions exist, the fairness does not. That is why we cannot read democratic capacity off a statute book, and why I would compare EMBs not on which provisions they hold, but across measurable dimensions of capability. Just to close and summarize, a country may hold formal sound provisions and still produce exclusion if its MBA lacks independence, capability, procedural fairness, cultural legitimacy, or public trust. Conversely, a system with simple rules can produce high legitimacy when those rules are administered consistently, transparently, and inclusively. The real object of comparison is not the law of ballot access, but the institutional capability of election management bodies to organize democratic fairness. Ballot access, then, is where law, organization, and culture meet. The statute tells us who may contest. Whether that becomes a real, fair, and trusted opportunity depends on the institution that administers it, on its justice, its cultural fluency, and its capability to sustain fairness election after election. If we want to strengthen democracy, we should stop asking only what the rules allow and start asking how well our institutions are built to be fair. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for those valuable observations. Your remarks has definitely taken us beyond the rules of ballot access to the larger dimension of how fairly our institutions actually work in practice. You have emphasized organizational justice, cultural context, and the capacity building of election management bodies. Thank you once again. We now come to another important topic, strengthening electoral democracy, international norms, comparative practices, and standards for inclusive participation. Taking us into this topic is Sir Angat Mehta, IPS, a 2020 badge officer of Akmut Kader, and is the Superintendent of Police, KE Panyor District. Sir is a graduate in political science and holds a master's degree in criminal justice. Before joining the civil services, he has worked with IREDA, the Ministry of External Affairs, and the Observer Research Foundation. Sir, may I request you to make your presentation, please?
With your permission, sir. Honorable Governor Sir, respected seniors, members of academia, and my fellow friends and colleagues. My friends earlier took us through trust and democratic resilience, and then on the stress points of democracy. I will be commenting last but not the least on strengthening electoral democracy, the international norms that we have studied, the comparative practices that we want to highlight, and the strategies for inclusive participation. This is not an exhaustive list, I must disclaim at the beginning, but this is an illustrative list. Interestingly, ballot access, which was our topic for Arunachal Pradesh, is where freedom and the rights that we have meet administrative law and electoral regulation. Right? So we may have, say, procedural rights, but substantively those can be defeated if ballot access is inhibited. So the fact that you have a political party is not enough in fact, actually, because in practice there are many loopholes and many lacuna which inhibit democracy. The international norms that bind all of this are broadly drawn from four sources. One is the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights. The Indian basis stems from Article 19, especially C, which is the right to form associations. And the UN Declaration on Minorities also highlights that that democracy in general has to be not just majoritarian or the rule of majority, but also include minority voices in substantive ways. And finally, in an electoral procedural way, IDEA also requires equitable treatment, registration rules, objective rejection grounds, etc. Next. Interestingly, what has come up in our study so far is that the global consensus is not low barriers, which means that you have low barriers to entry and then very high levels of enforcement later on. Instead, the most successful jurisdictions are those that have high barriers and moderate levels of enforcement. This would be, for example, as my friend Kunal had earlier mentioned, that you have objective basis of rejection, that there is a reduction in administrative discretion. So first of all, you need objective entry, a closed list of requirements rather than open-ended discretion that we see in many evolving jurisdictions which have recently transitioned to being democratic in the last 30-40 years or so. Secondly, there has to be a transparent verification mechanism, because it does not matter if you have very high standards at the initial stages, but then there is no continuing verification of members, signatures and records, etc. Third is proportionate continuity. Finance, authorized officers, public filings. These are very important, but they should not become the one and only standard, because what matters is that you have a constant churn, there's a churn in the elites, so to say, and incumbents don't have an established advantage. And last is equal information, because information should not become a basis for inequality, should not, in access to information should not be a stumbling block in the democratic participation, so to say. Next. A brief comment on our journey so far. We have an extensive system of codified law to manage our democracy. Our EMB, which is the Election Commission of India, is one of the most renowned and most sophisticated EMBs globally. So our party system, as I said earlier, flows from the Article 19 of the Constitution, but in practical terms flows from the Representation of People Act, 1951. As you may be aware, 1950 we had our first RPA, and the second one, which dealt in greater detail in procedural terms and on penalties and enforcement, came in 1951. Article 324, which gives vast constitutional powers and safeguards on our EMB, which is the Election Commission, and the Symbols Order of 1968, which looks closely on visibility and on political participation of those recognized parties. We've highlighted some of the provisions of the Indian system of codified law. which is that new parties within 30 days have to submit an extensive list of documentation, and then these are published for rejection and objections by other people, other parties, etc. We also have 6 recognized national parties currently with 56 recognized state parties. We will be coming to this later, how this tier of recognized and then within recognized national and state has come about and how we have reached those standards. And finally, we have seen how the Supreme Court has narrowed through its multiple rulings how powers of deregistration are exercised by the ECI, and which such as fraud or only abandonment of constitutional allegiance are now seen as solid grounds for deregistration. Next. So we are asking very simple 5 questions in comparative practices, as in, does the party have genuine support? So Australia has come out as one of those standout countries. Many people know it only because voting is seen as a mandatory exercise there as a part of citizenship. But more importantly, it is in a substantive way a membership-based political system also, in which you have a very active sort of primary, party primary system, public objections and periodic reviews. So in that way, Australia does not just want a election every 5 years or so, but a continuing process of citizen involvement as well. Then Mexico asks, does the party itself have a national footprint? So it has multiple state assemblies like India, and it has very clear requirements of a political party. What sort of footprint do you have at the initial stage itself? Germany also has come out in as a highlight in a constitutional sort of way, is that the party has to be very, because of their own contextual history and the Nazi party, etc., they now have a very high standard of constitutional alignment in which the basic law requires internal organization and political and the democratic polity within the party itself. And in South Africa, we have a different sort of tier in which the party has to register at multiple levels, and that is one of the initial stages itself. And in Indonesia, we see through their new SIPOL process that has come out, in which people can check and verify and give their objections also if they are included in the electoral lists of multiple parties. Next. So we see very clearly that registration does not automatically create visibility, because registration is merely the first stage. After that comes recognition, and recognition unlocks multiple things, right? So it can unlock symbols in India through the symbols order. It has status in many countries like Germany or other jurisdictions. It can give you free, it can lead to state funding. It can also lead to presence on air through media, through state-sanctioned media, etc., on radio, etc. So it gives a vast array of advantages. In India, national parties are through 2 or 3 ways. You either have to have 6% of valid votes in 4 or more states, and you need to have 4 Lok Sabha seats, or you can have 2% of Lok Sabha seats, which would be about 10 seats in today, with at least 3 states, in at least 3 states. And then you can have either state party level recognition in 4 states. So this is the 3 ways we have decided to reach a national party recognition. The interesting thing is that this has not been reformed for the last 25 years or so. And the way that we have reached this itself is a very interesting way. And perhaps one of the results of this study could be a relook at how we look at a national party, how do we define a national party or a state party, and maybe look at it through a sense of consolidation or fragmentation that is currently going on in our country. Mexico uses a continuing performance test. So this is not a once given sort of privilege. Every time you have to ensure at least 3% of valid votes are polled by that party to have that sort of access to those electoral privileges. South Africa also, it separates registration and from eligibility to contest a particular election, and prevents the registration stage from becoming the one catch-all stage. So there are multiple stages in that journey. Next. Next. No, back. Yes. So for standards for inclusive participation, in India we have section 29B in RPA, which requires contribution reports from donations above 20,000. Right? The understanding is that even after we have been given these privileges and registration, the register has to remain credible. We prevent unrecognized parties from obtaining donations above 2,000 and using banking channels only. But we are seeing that audits and deregistrations have become increasingly very rare. And because of Supreme Court judgments as well, the exercise of that power has also become very narrow. So we then see there is a problem of inactive parties that are often used for questionable tax deduction, donations, and money laundering, and many of those problems come into place. So the register then has to have that sort of ongoing process in which we are able to exercise effective oversight over the whole galaxy of political parties and the systems in place. South Africa has come about as a very active constitutional body and EMB, because they have regular sort of reviews, and many unauthorized or unrecognized parties are pruned from the list if they are unable to meet those standards. Next. I'm highlighting 3 of these stories to show that transparency is not achieved by uploading documents. In all of these 3 jurisdictions, information was used as a weapon, and access to information was used in the political process. So all of these 3 case studies highlighted how it is imperative in an evolving or in a sophisticated democracy that information is not used by the incumbent or by established political parties to reduce effective democratic competition. So in Nigeria, we had multiple problems earlier with their election procedures, and with the recent new portal, they have been able to see that a lot of procedural infirmities that they were facing earlier, those have been removed using technology. In Indonesia, they had obverse of it. They had administrative discretion, which practically removed almost 16 candidates, and the documents of those 16 candidates as exempt, which actually reduces people's access to information and their ability to judge a candidate who will later on represent them. So this was later revoked. And in Malawi, the Electoral Commission, and the other extreme, refused to give analyzable electoral voter registers, which are very important for all parties. So this also shows how restricting information or restricting the format of information also can reduce the function of democracy in practical terms. So one of the highlights of this is how a one-stop party access portal with model constitution templates, checklists, live status tracking, public objections, and reasons and speaking orders for those decisions with multilingual forms and liaison channels can be a good attempt at trying to resolve this, one of these stress points, as one of my previous speakers had mentioned. Next. Another standard for inclusive participation is that there has to be reasoned orders or a fair system in which legitimacy and trust, as one of the first speakers had said, that it's not enough to do justice, but you have to be seen to do justice. So one of the recommendations of the study so far that has come up is that there has to be closed statutory list of registration requirements and the grounds for refusal. And we should avoid open-ended discretion. For example, the idea of substantive violation or the administrative leeway that it gives often leads to that is often the basis for electoral petitions that go to high courts and supreme courts. And the problem being that in India we don't have a specialized election tribunal. So pendency is very high and decisions are often delayed for years in the High Court and the Supreme Court. The decisions, even if they come, are too late to do much. Australia's notice and variation process, which is a continuing process, and South Africa's reapplication route, both give you a way in which you can correct your errors in time and still not fall foul of substantive violations. The UK also has a very proactive sort of approach in which it gives model templates and has public comment stages which involves the citizen, but there is no statutory right of appeal from refusal. And the judicial review is the only way of appeal left. Germany provides judicial protection, and as I said, Germany has come out as one of the outstanding examples of constitutional electoral management, in which they have not delegated most of the procedures for statutory law like in India under the RPA Acts, but has mostly tried to include it within the basic laws. And Mexico has come out as one of those jurisdictions with a specialist electoral tribunal which has exercised active power in these sorts of issues. Next. So finally, I would like to reiterate the points that I started with earlier, that the international benchmarks or the standards that this study is supposed to come out with, of many of those standards, 4 I felt that must stand out should be objective entry, which can be replicated all over the world, which is a closed list of requirements, and a reduction of administrative discretion. Second should be transparent verification and a continuing process of verification and checking. A third should be proportionate continuity, in which there are standards but not onerous standards that protect the incumbent and reduce political competition. And fourth, that we should reduce information asymmetry as one of the weapons in electoral competition. And if I may add a few more points at the end, how to use internal party democracy to achieve real democracy, to have a way of membership-based parties which have party primaries for candidate selection, which give transparency in coalitions, both pre-poll and post-poll, and also perhaps a relook at the 10th schedule, which reduces the powers of elected representatives in the hand, and it concentrates powers in the hands of unelected party leaderships in India. Also a close look at electoral laws, the penalties and the enforcement mechanisms, because increasingly what we are seeing is in constant election cycles, every year we have multiple election cycles all across the country, the ability to do oversight and enforcement of the political party ecosystem becomes very difficult, because the procedural demands are so high that the substantive job of looking at the ecosystem and pruning it and enforcing those penalties becomes nearly impossible for a central national EMB. So those are some of the points that so we have tried to look at and that have come up and which we wanted to share with the group here. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, sir. You have compared and taken us through how different countries regulate the entry, recognition, and continued participation of political parties. And we have also taken note of the 4 principles that should guide a fair and inclusive system. Also, thank you, sir, for highlighting the case studies from Nigeria, Indonesia, and Malawi. Now, for an academic perspective on this topic, we turn to Professor Vandana Mishra. Madam is with the Center for Political Studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, and has over 25 years of teaching experience. Her areas of specialization include Indian politics, Public Policy and Public Administration. She currently serves as the member of the University Grants Commission and the Executive Council of the Indian Council of Social Science Research. Ma'am, we look forward to your remarks on the issues raised.
Thank you, Shaina. Honorable Governor, sir, and fellow participants, I know we are running short of time. I will try to minimize what I have to say, sir. With your permission, sir, I would like to start with an anecdote which happened with me. It was in 1990s, and I got a chance to contest University Students' Union elections. And I had 3 days to file my nomination. The first day, I just was at loss what to do with the nomination paper. On second day, I went to the returning officer with my nomination paper, and somebody outside the election office, university election office, told me that the person who has proposed your name has already proposed somebody else's name, so your nomination might be cancelled if you submit it. So I came back. The next day was the third and the final day. I had to submit it. So I was advised by some intelligent friend of mine that when somebody is proposing your name, take his or her iCard with you so that she or he cannot propose anybody else, because you need the photocopy of her iCard with the nomination paper. So I had to do that to file my nomination. So this happened with me, and that was in 1990s. The rider is that I was a political science. I am a political science student. I was studying in political science, and despite that, there was nobody telling me, even the people who were there in that organization, that how a nomination needs to be filed, and there was no other source of information from where I could know that how a students' union election formality needs to be done, right? So I want to just to start with my presentation. Now, as Professor Rohit has rightly said, that this idea of democracy has been there in India since ages, since at least centuries, we should be saying. And this, the conceptual idea of democracy can be very easily traced to Atharvaved and, even Arthashastra, Rigved, and we find multiple references where sabhas and samitis, as Rohitji also directly said, Sabha, Samiti and Vidat, where discussion, deliberation and public participation was ensured. If we look at kind of, Mahajanpadas, Vaji and Mala Mahajanpada, where not even there was public participation, the decisions were taken even by the procedure of voting, and that is, thousands of years back. Now, why I am bringing this to the table? Because of two reasons. One is that science, medical science has already proved that genetics is not only about how you look or what you eat. Genetics is also about the kind of information that is stored in your genes. And it comes to play its role over the centuries. This medical science has proved that genetics is also about information, it is also about intelligence. So, democracy, is in our genes. We know deliberation, we know public participation, we know dissent also, we know debate also, we know how to put forward what we want to do. So it is not about the shalaks of the ancient times when, it was the pins that used to be attached to the breast, and the shalak dharak, how many pins you get made you the person who wins. So this is in our genes. So this is first thing. And the second thing is that the constitution makers, when they chose the parliamentary form of a government and democracy, they did not do it in abstract. It was not a result of the deliberation of the Constituent Assembly alone. When they were deliberating in the Constituent Assembly, they also had they had discussed about the values and ethos of ancient India. They deliberated why we need democracy, why we can only be a parliamentary form of democracy. So it was only, the act was only, rejoining the historical link that was broken because of hundreds, thousands of years of alien rule. So that is why I brought in the ancient aspect here. Now to come to the present, since there are many practitioners here, I really would like to applaud, more than 900 million voters, thousands of polling stations and thousands of political parties. Kudos to our the aspirations of our country, and still the Election Commission has been managing it for years with the same commitment, same resilience, same fairness, same transparency. And as has been brought forward by Rohit ji, I think that constituency is Nangriat in Meghalaya, which has those live route bridges, or even Tashigang in Himachal, where the polling station is at 15,000 feet of height. Even in Arunachal or Uttarakhand, polling stations are at heights, and the polling agents have to travel for days sometimes to conduct Gir Forest, where there is one voter and they establish a polling booth. So we must applaud this effort that the Election Commission of India has been doing since so many years. Now, I don't want to go into the different kind of steps that Election Commission takes. For example, we all know about Suvidha app, we know about C-Vigil, we know about ETPBS, n number of things, n number of initiatives Election Commissioner takes. I would like to come to the comparative aspect that Mr. Angad has also brought about. The first thing is that why do we compare? Why did this team tried to compare different countries? Because we all together, six and the people who are working with them, we really wanted to know how in other countries of the world, how in other democracies of the world, how do they engage political aspirants? How do they manage their election system? What kind of procedures they follow? Not only because we wanted to enrich, what we are doing. I really, as an individual, I really feel that we are doing a very good job. And after comparison also, though there are areas where we need to learn, but the kind of expanse that our country has, we are doing a great job. So that definitely is true. So this kind of comparison we wanted to bring in, and this team has worked very well in ensuring that, in looking for the procedural things that are different and similar, the legal requirements that are there in different democratic countries. Not only this, the team has really worked well to underline the innovative ideas or the innovative techniques to make the ballot access more transparent, more reliable, and more, practicable. So while doing the comparison, they were also looking for those areas. Now, very interesting thing, you will get a chance to read the report. This Audrey Tang model that they have used, this team has used one Audrey Tang model. It's a Taiwanese member of cabinet, and it is about how technology can be used democratically so that it benefits one and all. So this Audrey Tang model, which is digital democracy, it tries to bridge the gap between. It is very interesting. It tries to bridge the gap between availability of information and usability of information. You might have a lot of information at your hand. We might have all these reports, but how do you use that information? So that is why, that is where my anecdote comes to play a role, that we have information. Information is there somewhere. How to use that information? So there is a gap, and this Audrey Tang model tries to cover that gap. And she also argues that when any kind of information is available, just the availability of information will not ensure transparency. Transparency in the electoral process is ensured when the citizen knows how a particular decision is being made. It's not only about the decision, but the citizen should be able to know the process of decision making. The citizen should be able to check if there is any flaw, and the citizen should be able to offer a remedy. So these are the three things that Audrey Tang model brings to the table, which may not be available, in the earlier political science models. Now, I'm just coming to the few last points that it will be an extensive report, but I'm just pointing out 5 insights, major insights, which might be which might have a running strand in all the three, in the entire report, which I would like to bring. The first insight that has been offered from the report is that universally, there are laws in every country which regulate ballot access. There are laws which regulate the candidates also and the ballot access to political parties also. The difference is that these laws, the design of these laws and the way these laws are ensured, it differs. And rightly so. You know, every country has their own system, they have their own administrative mechanism, so there is a difference there. The problem is that at some places these laws are favorable, but some places these are very selective. Very selective, so when they are selective, they become restrictive. I would like to say that they become restrictive. Those countries might not use the same language. So this is the first insight. The second insight, which Angad rightly brought in, that there needs to have a distinction between registration and recognition. Because just the entry into the formal process of political system does not ensure participation. If you are a registered political party or if you are a registered candidate, it does not mean that, you know, everything is transparent. There has to be proper, transparent, fair measures for recognition. Because if we are, and interestingly, fortunately, there are countries which differentiate between these two, registration stage and recognition stage. And if by mistake, we only study the registration process and if fail to study the recognition process, we are doing a major fallacy towards this entire process of democratic access. This is the second thing, second insight. The third is about the threshold and the supportive mechanisms. The threshold, the starting point from where there is from where we say the ballot access to political parties. If the thresholds are complex, if the entry points are complex, then the entire structure is exclusionary. Why exclusionary? Because complex thresholds are beneficial for already established political parties. Because they are already there. They are there for 30 years, they are there for 50 years. They don't actually care about the present thresholds. So they benefit the already existing major political parties and not advantages to the new incumbents or the new formations that are existing, which is wrong, which is not fair. So this is the third insight that this report brings. The fourth is, which might be a concern for any common citizen, is how fair the procedures are. You know, how fair the electoral procedures are, and the comparisons have brought it very clearly that the ballot access to political parties, it largely depends upon the clarity of laws. The laws need to be clear. You know, they need not be framed in a way so that, you don't understand them. They have to be framed in a way so that even a common person is able to understand them. Laws should be clear. Administrative process need to be transparent, and there has to be objective grounds of rejection, which is very interesting. Objective grounds of rejection. If you are rejecting somebody's candidature or some nomination, there has to be objective grounds. And fourth is information about the respective remedies for if you have been rejected, what is the information available about this rejection. So this fairness, if a system is able to present the entire process in this fair manner, then the ballot access is easier. And last but not the least is that equality is, substantial equality is not, if substantial equality is not achieved, equality in law is useless. So it is not only about what kind of laws are required to make ballot access, it is also about whom does these advantages are meant for. It is not only about what, it is also about for whom are we talking of. So these are the 5 insights that I have found through the report, and it has a running strand throughout the report. And last but not the least, sir, I would also like to say that this ballot access is just one gatekeeper in this entire cycle of conducting elections to the declaration of the government. So, and it needs to be studied in this frame only. We cannot study it as a separate legal aspect. It has to be weaved into this entire process, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Your analysis has provided an excellent academic perspective and has fittingly concluded the technical session. And ma'am, the anecdote you shared is an eye-opener for many of us, especially for those who are not from election or political science domain. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we have had the privilege of listening to a series of insightful presentations this afternoon, I must say. Before we come to the keynote address by the chair, we would like to open the floor for comments and observations from participants present here, as well as those joining us online. Now I open the floor to all.
So, with your permission. So, thank you very much. I indeed feel very, very privileged to have been invited here in this August hall, and also to be able to interact with the friends who are digitally present here. Just to clarify, I have had the honor of working for electoral affairs for close to 10 years. As presiding officer, assistant returning officer, and chief electoral officer of an important state. And I could conduct the elections to the parliament, election to the state assembly, to the local bodies, and do the election observations nationally and internationally. So close is the matter to my heart that I also wrote a book on electoral data. Lots of things have been said, the powerful presentations I appreciate, and commentary by our learned academics. They have been very, very insightful. I think I've become wiser today in a short span of 2 hours. I, as a practitioner, would flag a few issues, with your permission, which do not only touch the ballot access, they do, but they also go beyond the broader electoral management and democracy itself. The very ecosystem in which elections are done, electoral cycle management takes place, and the democracy flourishes. One, the elections must be timely and there should be peaceful transfer of power. Two, there has to be quality electoral observation. Three, there has to be no electoral capture by money, violence, or cost. There has to be law and there has to be enforcement. Four, can we have compulsory voting? I believe several countries do have that. Australia comes to my mind. They have a fine also for citizens who do not vote. But then they also have the managerial system in which in the afternoon there's a telephone call and the person is reminded to vote. And if he does not still, for a valid reason, except for a valid reason like sickness or so, I think there's a fine of $50 Australian. We have to have the international best practices, not just copied, but tailored to our requirements to make them grow in situ. Can we have a model code of conduct for the media? I do not know, it's a very sensitive issue, but you can debate it further. The cost of elections has always been mind-boggling and is increasing by the day. Can we do something? The unaccounted wealth also finds its way. Can we do something like a compulsory state funding of elections? The election management bodies are not just election commissions, they are also the institutions of governance, and they are charged with the responsibility for institution building. Institutions which are directly or indirectly connected with elections and democracy. And finally, I say that we have to have a culture of political party development, which is missing in most of the countries which take pride in democracy. If political parties are strong and they are visionary, they have democracy within, and they ensure that the candidature is properly nurtured, the candidates are rightly selected with good backgrounds, clean backgrounds, and who can give a futuristic turn around leadership, not only to the party and constituency, but to the entire country, then the entire ecosystem in which the ballot access takes place and the elections take place, that would be much, much better. I am very confident that all these points I have talked about, they are interconnected and they reinforce one another. We have also talked about some time back the elections in conflict situations in different parts of the world. Whether elections can be used as a tool to restore democracy, to reduce conflict, or if wrongly handled, maybe there is an addition to conflict. Those things also can be kept in mind once we finalize our reports. Ultimately, a culture of democracy has to be brought about, not just by people sitting here or the practitioners or just the academic commentators. It has to be by the will of the people, by the society at large, by the communities, by the entire voter population and the country as a whole, wherever elections are held, and the electoral democracy is supposed to flourish. Thank you very much. God bless you all.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, sir is the chairman of Administrative Reforms Commission, Pramod K. Jain, retired IAS. So I would like to invite the rest of the participants also to come forward with your comments. We could also see that many of the CEO officers have joined online. In fact, a supervisor from IIIDM for Arunachal Pradesh, Dr. Chandrika, Madam, is also online. Ma'am, if you are still with us, any perspectives which you would like to share with us?
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, Shaira ma'am. And it was great listening to all the participants, all the speakers, all CEOs, and it was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for such a wonderful and elaborate presentation.
Since we have so many academicians and researchers, we have prepared this report based on our practitioners and academic experts' opinion. And the concluding remarks or based on the study, whatever the presentation was made. If you have any comment to offer, and if you want to just even send us in writing also, because this report we are preparing, we will be distributing to all of you also later on when it is finalized. But if you want to give any remarks or any suggestions, or if you have any question, we are open for that. Thank you.
No, sir, I don't have any questions. It would be great if the report is sent at the earliest. Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Professor Nayak.
Honorable Governor of Arunachal Pradesh, thank the Chief Electoral Officer for giving me an opportunity to speak on certain issues. I was quite fascinated by the paper presented by Kunalji. We talked about the exclusion and how exclusion of the voters and how the different rules and regulations are made such that people, those who are working in Far East, they can also exercise their electoral rights. But here, to my mind, two things comes. Particularly in social science research, we talk about errors, type 1 error and type 2 error. And here, if we apply those concepts, here that is basically the error of exclusion and error of inclusion. Now, when we try to reduce the inclusion error, sometimes we forget the exclusion error. And that is quite true in all social science research, and that is also true in the electoral process. Now, the point is that when we are implementing SIR, we are, to my mind, as an academics, we are more concentrated on inclusion error, and we are trying, that means we are giving less importance to exclusion error. that means people who are excluded from the exercising their voting rights and all. Now there should be a mechanism where this exclusion error and that can be reduced. And finally, one significant point came to here: the cost of contesting election. Now, when I compare, that is, Professor Nanibat is here with me from RGU. The particularly in Arunachal Pradesh, unofficial sources from our students and all, the cost of actual expenditure incurred by a candidate, it comes to some crores which cannot be estimated. But when I take a state, that is Mizoram, I was talking to some MPs, and there they said, if you have 10 lakhs rupees, it is enough to win an election. Now, where these kind of things are happening? And so the issues of the unaccounted money spent in election process, that needs to be examined. And here the topic is ballot access by political parties and candidates. The topic ignores most probably the electorate. So that should also be included as a subtopic of this conference in due course of time. Thank you.
Kunal, would you like to comment on this? Yeah. Honorable Governor, sir, I have, sir, and everyone present, sir, I was patiently listening to all of the presenters, sir, the topic that was discussed. Sir, what I could notice is that, sir, we have really talked about how well the access to ballot can be a good thing. But is the access to ballot a bad thing? That was not at all discussed, which I personally believe should be examined. Sir, I am referring to this because many of the times, sir, there is a precondition to which a set of community can then only be able to make a right decision. Some of the communities which are residing, at least in Changlang, do not have such set of condition yet met, sir. There is no clarity on the citizenship. There is yet not clarity on their ST and indigenous status, land rights, so on and so forth, which is usually a state subject. How the citizen has to be, how the community has to be treated by this state government for various benefits. On the other hand, sir, because the ECI mandates with respect to electoral roll registration is pretty much clear for entire country. So on that basis, they have been given political rights prelude to their indigenous recognition right or whatever state rights they should have got. So that has actually made the administrative solution that should have been arrived more problematic, more messy now. Because they have political rights, because they are now empowered in terms of they make a say in formation of local leaders to MLAs and everything, they are at a more aggressive in terms of their demands, due to which the solution which could have been arrived 30 years back is yet not a possibility in today's world, sir. So not necessarily always access is something a good thing, sir. I think access is something, there should be some precondition and the state government should be given a liberty in those decisions as well. So that would be my submission. And overall, sir, I am very impressed with what Professor Naik has raised, because I felt that all the three deliberation, the three team was to what extent it was democratic, because I felt that the negative things were not much highlighted, while only the courage to highlight the negative things was in this forum today was by Professor Naik only. So I am very impressed by him, not by the other presenters. In an open forum, the negative things should be acknowledged, and then only we can move towards positive things, sir. And sir, one of the thing, sir, in general, my understanding, sir, I was, कल भी मैं कुणाल से बात कर रहा था सर, तो मैं I was speaking to him कि are you going to do that discussion जैसे Athens when the Athena versus Sparta. That is the whole bedrock of democracy, jahan mein democracy as institution was discussed. So is your work going to be that seminal in which I will hear about Plato and Aristotle, or Aristotle versus Socrates? Sir, I was just, picking his brain on that. But, sir, what I could understand is that, sir, in democracy, we should be exercising all our rights very freely. And for that, it should be much important that if anybody is accessing the ballot, anybody who is not accessing the ballot, to what extent they are similarly situated. So, and overall, sir, democracy in today's world, sir, there is a huge asymmetry between the government in power and the government not in power, the parties which are not in power. Such huge asymmetry, which was highlighted in Professor Vandana Mishra also was highlighting organizational, I think Professor Rohit was also highlighting about this in his organizational. So those asymmetry, how we are going to address? Unless and until it is not addressed, sir, then it would be incomplete. And I really appreciate that it was recognized that, sir, we should be having a holistic end-to-end understanding of the ballot, and it should not be limited only to the election day. So to that extent, sir, there is no such institution which has evolved in that manner. Today we do not have institution. In fact, after election, I don't think any of us would be knowing कि हमारे election assembly constituency में कितने अभी election petition pending है, क्या उनका किसी तरीके से कुछ nomination को challenge किया गया है. ये सारे information ready reckoner की तरह हमें नहीं मिलते. In fact, next election तक हम वो पूरी तरह भूल जाते हैं. मिजोरम में मैं वर्क कर चुका हूँ, मिजोरम का भी मेंशन किया गया था वहां में. वन ऑफ द थिंग दैट दे हैव इंश्योर्ड इज दैट, सर, दे यूज द इंस्टीट्यूशन ऑफ प्राइमरीज, द सिस्टम ऑफ प्राइमरीज. जिस तरीके से प्रेसिडेंशियल इलेक्शन होता है थ्रू, तो वहां में सभी जगह छोटे छोटे जो वेंग बोलते हैं, इससे विलेज को लोग वेंग बोलते हैं, सर. तो इन वेंग, एवरी वेंग देयर विल बी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ऑफ डिबेट्स, and all the prospective candidates will be coming, and of the same party also, they will be contesting with each other, they will be in public debates, they will be highlighting what are the things that they are going to do, how they are going to achieve the same, and then based on that, sir, primaries, the internal democracy is very much strengthened, and then finally the what you call final candidate is selected. In terms of, I was there in the Panchayat election, I conducted there as, sir, there, sir, even for voter turnout, we didn't have any issue because the CBOs, they were there, sir, YMA and MHIP, they used to bring, and what you call, we do not have to worry about any sort of election malfunction for sure. However, sir, still such a good way of democracy has yet not reduced the what we call the inequality that exists in Mizoram as a society. So to what far the institution of democracy has really succeeded, and is it still after election? The thing is that after election, post poll, it is still the government being what you call abiding by a minority or the elite, that needs to still be examined on the larger. Then only, and what you call, we would be able to understand whether democracy is working as we has envisaged or not. So democracy is not the best way of what you call election or system of government. It has been highlighted by many of the speakers, but it is among the best, among the worst. It is the best. That is what it is said. So we should not be having this unnecessary fetish of making it perfect. We should be knowing that it is going to not be perfect. We should acknowledge that it's not going to be perfect. If it is not going to be perfect, then what is the, अगर आपको पता होगा कि आपका बच्चा अच्छा नहीं है, तो आप उसको क्या करते हैं? आप उसको मॉनिटर करते हैं, आप उसको ट्रांसपेरेंट रखते हैं, आप उसको जितना हो सके आपका म्यूचुअल डिस्क्लोजर, मैंडेटरी डिस्क्लोजर आप इंक्रीज करते हैं. तो मुझे लगता है कि सर अगर हम लोग इस चीज को ज्यादा मतलब ये नहीं सोच करके इट इज वेरी परफेक्ट, तो हमें व्हाट यू कॉल इलेक्शन कम कराने चाहिए, एक्सपेंडिचर ज्यादा, ये सब नहीं सोच करके हमें इस पे ज्यादा एम्फेसिस होना चाहिए कि जब जब पब्लिक मैंडेट बदल रहा है तो क्या वो ट्रांसलेट हो रहा है कि नहीं चेंज इन गवर्नमेंट में. लेट इट ब्रिंग टू एन एक्सटेंट वो.
प्लीज बी ब्रीफ.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, sir, so that is all my points that I wanted to say about, sir. With this, I conclude. Thank you, sir, for giving me time, sir.
Firstly, I would like to thank Professor S.K. Nayak for sharing your observations. Professor Nayak is the Vice Chancellor of Rajiv Gandhi University. He is the university is the co-host of today's conference. And I would like to thank Vishal sir also for sharing your practitioner's experience. May we now also hear, okay. Yes.
Honorable Governor, sir, I am Dr. Padu, former Director Higher and Technical Education, Government of Arunachal Pradesh, now Vice Chancellor, Northeast Frontier Technical University. It has been an excellent deliberation, and in fact, I am one of the persons who have reaped or harvested so many ideas from these deliberations, because most of the things are Latin to me. I am not a student of political science. But then the common platform, as we understand, is that our electoral officers are working very hard and to declare the result. But in spite of working so much, trying to bring out a good result, at the end we find that when the result is declared, there is trust deficit. This gap, how do we bridge that our common people have trust on the election process, and also the election process can confidentially say, or with confidence, can say that, yes, we have done the best for the public. We have declared the result. Because at the end we find that there are so many hallagullas, so many disgruntled people, and so many leaders, those who are not happy with it. But the process will go on, and we need to do something for this. Secondly, whatever materials I have received, they are beautiful, great, and how do I transfer them or carry them to my students in the university? If anybody can suggest, or if there is any compilations on such issues at the end, kindly share it to us. That is my request.
I will take last speaker. Other things we will discuss over coffee.
Oh, carry on, please. Okay. Honorable Governors and all the scholarly presenters, speakers and participants. Actually, laws are already in place to ensure fair election. Things have been gradually improving, system is getting better, but despite all, still we have gray areas, whether it's pre-poll, during poll or post-poll scenario. For example, in many states in our country, still caste, community determines the distribution of ticket by most of the political parties, not the merit, not the capabilities of the candidate is taken into account. So we have to brood on how to execute and implement. Though rules are there, laws are there in place, but often implementation is a problem. The politicians during election of all political parties, not one, sometimes go for gross violation. They instigate, they make such provocative statements that the poor innocent masses, they quarrel, the supporters of the political parties. There is law to punish such elements, but often, despite gross violation, the politicians are not punished, despite creating violence, despite making provocative statements. So these things, and then muscle and money still continue to play a role. It is open secret. Though Election Commission of India is clear about it, and there is capping, there is limit for expenditure, everything.
But is it really implemented on ground? Not to speak of assembly election, not to speak of this municipal corporation election or parliamentary election, even during election of unions, associations, institutional, educational, institutional elections, other community-based elections, money does play a role, though there is law against it, but we are unable to implement. So it's a time for us to brood and work on effective measures so that all violators are really punished. That's all. Thank you, sir, from us.
Thank you, sir. Honorable Governor, sir. Actually, I am a thematic expert on this, so it's better for me to give an information, to share an information here that I, as a coordinator of Center for the Study of Developing Societies, New Delhi had conducted a study across the states in India, and we covered 29,000 respondents, in which Election Commission of India is ranked in number 2 in the trust, as far as trust is concerned. It is just below Supreme Court of India, 52%, 51%. Just an information for all of you. Jaswani Madam talked about trust. Not just trust is important in a democratic country like us. What is also important is perception of the people. Therefore, there are rumors indicating that Election Commission of India is not doing its constitutional duties. Just I wanted to repudiate that allegation. Number 2, I think as far as our papers are concerned, or paper is concerned, we have had excellent presentation by all the presenters. We are not actually supposed to talk many things about the negative aspects of we are expected to talk about or prepare a paper on international standards and model so that it is applicable across the countries, across the models, and across the electoral systems. And we also have, sir, just I'll take 2 minutes. I will say, as far as India is concerned, as far as Northeast and Arunachal Pradesh are concerned, we have many things to offer. Sir, Arunachal Pradesh, I have conducted study for Election Commission of India, Chief Electoral Officer, 3 times, and ballot access of political parties, candidates and voters are phenomenal, and the participation is phenomenal too. Sir, 72%, not in any of the states, I would doubt that. At 72% on an average, the participation. Now, what is lacking in Arunachal Pradesh is ethical and informed participation. So that needs to be taken care of. Now, last point, sir, that is about model code of conduct. Professor Singh talked about legal sanction to be given to the model code of conduct, but then we are very expert in manipulating the things. Even if we have we have legal and constitutional sanctions, so that can be manipulated. What is significant, what is important is the social sanction to be given. Sir was talking about MCC in Mizoram. And we also have MCC, local MCC in Arunachal Pradesh. We have had experimented with that, and that needs to be highlighted when we prepare the report on this. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, madams and sir, for the meaningful discussion. The range of perspectives shared this afternoon will certainly enrich the thematic work being undertaken by Team Arunachal, we believe. Now, we have the honor of hearing from the chair of today's conference, the Honorable Governor of Arunachal Pradesh, Lieutenant General Kaivalya Trivikram Parnayak, PVSM, UYSM, YSM, retired. With nearly 4 decades of distinguished service in the Indian Army, the Honorable Governor has commanded at the highest levels, including the Northern Command and the 4th Corps in the Northeast. As Governor of Arunachal Pradesh, he also holds pivotal roles in several educational institutions and is the Chief Rector of Rajiv Gandhi University as well, our collaborating institution for today's conference. Honorable Governor, sir, may I respectfully request you to deliver the keynote address.
Thank you very much. All the distinguished members from the Election Commission, all the Vice Chancellors, all the Deans, Professors, District Collectors, officers from the Police Academia. It's been a great day of discussions on a very sensitive subject which concerns all of us and happens round the clock in our country. While a lot of interesting, informative issues have come up during these discussions and presentations, I think the larger issue is that we have to, while we discuss these issues of bringing reforms in our processes, of legislations, and of methods of conduct, we should first look at the challenges that we have as a country. I'm very happy to note some of the comparisons and also the informative methods of ballot practiced by various other countries. While they are good to be adapted, but the challenge is that we are a very large population. It is actually amazing. People have come out with this notion that India is like a very large ship which is on the high seas. They can be mutinies, they can be wars, they can be anything. But as far as India is concerned, they have winds in the sails and they are moving ahead. So we are happy to be in this situation where right from the time of independence, we have slowly developed and inculcated those attributes which are required to run a country of this size and magnitude and a population which is so large, population which is so diverse, diverse in religion, diverse in their methods, in their practices. The communities, the classification of which have been since ancient times bothering us, have continued to exist today, and I dare say that sometimes they are exploited too. So if you keep these challenges in our mind, I think reforms, methods, and the conduct of elections in our country could get better refined. I think somebody made a point that over the years we have refined our systems. We have graduated to better methodologies. We are using technology to assist us in conducting these elections. So we are learning from ourselves. And that is the best part of the electoral process that we have in our country. Let me give you a small example of the experience I had. I was posted in Bhutan in 2008. That was a golden year in Bhutan. The 100 years of monarchy, the coronation of 5th king, and the first ever elections in Bhutan. Being the commandant of the military training team, I had the privilege of dealing with the majesties directly. And in many discussions that I had with the 4th king, who abdicated in favor of his son, the 5th king isn't on the throne, he shared his concerns with me as far as the elections are concerned. And his first comment was that I hope our parliament doesn't become like what the Indian is in times to come. So it was a tongue-in-cheek remark, and I told him, I said, well, the democracies are meant to be that. Democracies are meant to be discussions. They are meant to be expression of your desires, of your aspirations, and also desires of how the system has to function. So when there are so many people and so many opinions, this is going to have a fair amount of discussion, which swings like a pendulum from this end to that end. The Chief Justice was asked to write the constitution for Bhutan. Now, Bhutan is not an example that I am making a mention because we need to emulate something from them. It is too small a country. But I think the wisdom of the royalty in Bhutan and the perceptions that they have had, they came up with some novel ideas. I would just like to inform this gathering. There could be some lessons through it, not for copying what they did, but for the method or the approach of what was done there. The elections were in two phases. In first phase, as many parties as were formed and registered could contest. The two largest parties which emerged in the first phase then would contest finally. Other parties could join them. It was like something like the US follows. Second one. Every person who was contesting had to be minimum a graduate. He had to have at least 5 years of experience in government service. Only then he could be nominated to contest the elections. The population in Bhutan, like in Arunachal, is very, very minuscule. And it is mostly concentrated on the western side of Bhutan. The central part has no population. There is a marginal population in the east. So, the problem was that in some constituencies, the voters were minimal. They were in 2 digits or single digits. But the election commission had to travel there and take them or ask them to vote. If in any constituency a person was the only contestant, he was not declared as the winner till he got more than 50% of the votes of the electorate. They had to still vote. If it could not resolve then also, then the nomination of that district would be done by the king himself. The Chief Justice of Bhutan was asked to write the constitution. He was one Mr. Doji, a very haughty, happy, boisterous person. And I remember he would come to our headquarters and discuss openly, how should we do things? He says, the Gyalpo or the king has told me, do everything that you want to, but let our parliament not look like what Indian parliament is. So he used to ask us, "Ab bataye sir, hum kya kare?" This was such a novice effort at writing the constitution by the Chief Justice. Ultimately, they were guided by us, and at the time when the elections were held and results were announced, the President, the Prime Minister, the Election Commissioner, and many other dignitaries descended from India to celebrate the first ever elections in Bhutan. In areas where there were very few population, very less population, then the decision to nominate the person elected, or if he was uncontested, he still had to be nominated by the king, or the king would allow the election commissioner to set a rule by which he would be nominated. If there was no nomination possible or there was no contestant, then the king would decide what is to be done. Why I am saying this is that our electoral process has also evolved in something similar over the years. We borrowed the systems from the British and we tried to Indianize it over a period of time. But the major difference of elections in our country is the population. I think the fourth king, before the elections, while I used to have a direct access with him, and the fourth king had magically stepped down from the throne and given the chance to his son to ascend the throne as a youngster. He abdicated his responsibility, but he was the guardian there. So he would come many times to our house and we used to have discussions, how will this election span, what will our people do, I hope they don't behave like what Indians do. This was his rant most of the times. But I think they chose a method and a means which was suitable for their small population of hardly 8 lakhs or 9 lakhs people. Why I'm saying this is that election process today in our country has become like a mini war. Secondly, the entire process of firstly identifying the people who can vote, secondly the whole voting pattern itself, and then bringing the whole results out is so laborious. It takes months. And today our politics have degenerated to a way and a form where all kinds of means and methods are being used at the time of elections. On one hand, we are talking of a fair electorate, we are talking of a fair method of conducting elections, which should be impartial, which should be transparent. But all that which happens during our elections, lesser said than better. While I say all this, there is a method in the madness. And I think we have succeeded in this world for conducting our elections in such a smooth manner now that the world looks at us as to how this is possible. So that's a credit to our people, our organizers, our parliament for putting in rules and regulations that have helped us to do what we are doing today. And we need to be proud of it. As far as the subject of discussion today, I would say that the method which is being followed today in the country, the election commission which has been nominated, and the way they are going about conducting the elections, we have come a long way from the time we got independent to now in the method of refinement, method of rules and regulations, and also of method of the conduct of elections. While rules and regulations are in place, I think the conduct is one which just shoots off the tangent. It is uncontrollable. The hype that comes into elections is unimaginable. And that is what spoils the fun of an orderly elections that we can have in our country. So, if we are talking about the ballot access by political parties and candidates, and also the way our laws or rules have been framed, we have come a long way. And I think it is a huge credit to our people who wrote the Constitution, who run the business of conducting elections. The Election Commission itself has come a long way today to refine the systems in as many ways as is possible. Now, having said that, we have a very unique case of managing our elections. On one hand, there is a proposal that we cannot have elections around the year, so there should be one election in a term of 5 years. Will that really happen? Is anybody's guess, because having it few state-wise itself is a big drama. It really, literally brings the country to a halt. And if we have to do the elections through the whole country at the same time, I shudder to think what will be the situation. We'll virtually come to a halt in all spheres of life. But be that may as it is, I feel that we have come a long way in refining our systems for elections. And what we are talking today, what refinements have taken place over a period of time, I think today the world is looking at us for being able to conduct elections in the manner that we do all through the year, all through the years. And they are definitely taking lessons from the way we are conducting things. It's a very large electorate. It's a huge country with different languages, religions, different methodologies. It's actually a wonder that this country conducts these elections all around the year for years and years and years. And that is the attention that actually gets the other smaller countries, say in Europe or in East Asia, West Asia. So I think before I say anything else, we need to be proud of the way we are going about it. Agreed that there are a lot of gaps, there are a lot of challenges in the conduct of these elections, which our predecessors have tried to refine over the years. There has been refinement, but there is no end to the refinement. It has to continue as a process year after year. There are 3-4 issues which I would like to highlight. Thank you for the presentations made by some of the members here. I think it has updated us on a lot of issues which are important whenever the elections take place. And these nuances are what are important. And actually how we deal with these nuances is how it pans out. In our own country, you'll find there are areas where elections are peaceful, they are orderly, they take place in the correct manner. In others, they become rowdy, they are not able to be managed, there is a lot of complaining, and that is happening because of the huge excitement of winning the elections by each and every party. So while the rules exist, while the Constitution tells us how this has to be conducted, the political parties always reinvent things. And I think what we are seeing today in the last decade or more is the ability of the ruling party to influence the elections because they have the power and the pelf. And if they have a complete majority in the assembly, they set the rules also. But having said that, the election process, though it has refined, has got lot of fallacies. It has got lot of drawbacks. And one of the biggest drawback is the excitable Indian population. Because we don't stop at anything. We invent and reinvent things, how to do or undo the other party. And the election rallies are, it's like a big circus. So when it is a circus, then all kinds of methods and means are adopted. And sometimes it looks bad because we tend to do things the wrong way, although all rules and regulations exist, how they need to be proceeded with. So what I feel is that discussions on these subjects are necessary. What we are doing here, for the first time actually in my service, I am seeing a discussion like this. But it is essential that we understand our political system. We also understand the gravity of conducting the elections. I think a lot of reforms have taken place in the conduct. The Election Commission today is a very strong body which has got a lot of powers, and they ensure that they implement the rules as they should be. Having said that, I think there is a need for us to look at it sensibly, and as much as we may try and say that, elections have to be fair, the only way to make them fair is to use more of technology and modern means to make it happen. The more technical we'll get, the more accurate we will be. Maybe we'll reduce the din which goes with the elections and the lot of noise that is created, lot of money that is used, all which is not supposed to be done. But it is uncontrollable. Everybody does it. So what I feel is that we are slowly graduating to a system, but the very enormity of our population, of the diverse factors like caste, creed, religion, everything plays into the conduct of elections in any part of the country today. There is no one standard format which can be applied to everybody. Or there is a format, but it doesn't get followed the way it should be. Therefore, I feel that these discussions are necessary. This is the first time we are having it in the Northeast. It is happening in other states also. So what we need is a good thought, is a method that can be evolved, that can make it more transparent and more logical than being taken away by other factors that are influencing the elections today. I have a few points. I didn't want to make a literary remark on this, but I'll still try and read out some portions which I have written, as they have some sense. So if I say I've listened with great interest to the deliberations this afternoon, it has given me a lot of thought. The 5 speakers who elaborated before we started, they gave us a very clear picture of the nuances that are followed during elections, also the pros and cons of what is happening today, and also there has been criticism on the methods that have been used. I think we would not have done a good job unless we criticize ourselves as to what is not right with our systems. Only then we can find solutions to it. Some solutions have come out from deliberations that we have had with members here today. Having spent most of my life in public service, I have learned that institutions endure not merely because they possess authority, but because they possess the humility to keep learning. And that is the humility we all need to imbibe. The finest institutions are those that never assume that they know everything. They remain curious, they welcome new ideas, and learn continuously from their own experiences as well as that of others. Election management is no exception. So, this International Conference on Ballot Access by Political Parties and Candidates is not just a professional gathering. It's a celebration of democracy and its enduring values. We talk of democracy, we follow democracy, we are recognized as the largest democratic country other than the USA, but our democracy is very different from that of the US. We are multi-party, they are not. So it reaffirms our shared belief that every eligible citizen must have the opportunity to participate, every genuine political voice deserves to be heard, and every democratic institution must remain fair, transparent, and inclusive. These are high-sounding words. It is not actually happening this way. We need to accept it. However, I am encouraged that the Election Commission of India, through the IIDEM has chosen to engage proactively with these emerging realities by bringing together election practitioners, technology experts, academicians, media professionals, and international partners, so as to exchange ideas on safeguarding democratic processes in an age of rapid technological change. I am equally impressed by the initiative of entrusting all the 36 chief electoral officers with thematic research on important issues relating to election management today. Every democracy has unique strengths and valuable lessons to offer. Through collaboration and dialogue, we can enrich our institutions, promote best practices, and build stronger, more responsive democracies for future generations. India's distinction as the world's largest democracy brings with it a special responsibility. It is heartening to note that during the Global Summit of Election Management Bodies at Bharat Mandapam earlier this year, the Election Commission of India unveiled the Atlas of Democracies of the World and launched the ECINet, a unified digital election management platform. These initiatives underscore India's resolve to share knowledge, to promote innovation, and strengthen cooperation amongst the election management bodies across the world. It is particularly meaningful that these deliberations are being held in Arunachal Pradesh today. We were the last to be given a status of statehood here in the Northeast. And let me just deviate and say that Arunachal has been one of the more neglected states of the Northeast. To our great happiness, we abound north of the Brahmaputra, and there were no bridges in old times to cross this. Only boats could bring people and bring them back. So Arunachalis have existed in a happy isolation for many more years after independence than the other states. But what was the result? The result is our state of happiness is one of the best. The people of Arunachal are more nationalistic than you can believe. They were subjected to the 62 war by the Chinese. They stood with our soldiers. And since then, the relationship between the soldier and citizen of Arunachal has been one of the best in the country. They have 26 tribes and hundreds of sub-tribes. Each have their own language. But they understood the need for integration, and they have adopted Hindi as a common language. It comes as a surprise to many people outside Arunachal that you all speak Hindi, and we speak good Hindi. So I meet a lot of students in the Arunachal house when I go to Delhi, and I see them roaming around late at night. So I asked them, I said, why are you roaming around? This is no time to go out. He says, हमको डर नहीं लगता है. I said, why? He says, sir, पहले हमको लोग समझता था फॉरेनर है और हमारे साथ अलग से बात करता है. आज हम हिंदी भी बोलता है, इंग्लिश भी बोलता है, तो हम जो भी बोलता है उसको जवाब देता है. It's just a small fact, but we have risen over a period of time. We have, in the northeast, we are the guardians of the northern borders against China. We have seen a war. We continue to see what happens on the Chinese border, which has made the people here more resilient. It has made them more alert. Secondly, today we are the pivot for northeast, or you can say far east. So look east policy has become act east policy, and Arunachal becomes a very important state because we are connected across the Irrawaddy, that side. Thirdly, the population is very nationalistic. They have a feeling, they have a sense. Therefore, the development which has taken place in the last 10 years is phenomenal. Where Arunachal was crawling, they were isolated, nobody came here. Over the years, we have started pole vaulting from here. So the development which has taken place in the last 10 years or so is phenomenal. We are actually getting into the mainstream slowly, and the integrity of the people here can never be questioned. Secondly, they are the only state in Northeast which did not have insurgency. Only state. And that is to their credit that they have remained within their own happy self and not got worried about internecine wars, about religious factionalism, etc. They are happy people, they stay together, and we have never had any insurgency here. So that is giving us the strength to become a pivot in the Northeast for whatever is happening as far as security is concerned with the Chinese, for whatever is happening as far as the trade and friendship is concerned in the Southeast Asia, Far East Asia, and also for the economic development that is taking place here. So I am just digressing from the main topic. But that gives me the chance to say that we are looking at a future where the environment here will propel us to come to some good terms where we can prosper and catch up with the rest of the states here in the country. So as we look to the future of our shared mission, it is clear and inspiring. We must continue to strengthen democracy by making ballot access more inclusive, accessible and meaningful for every eligible citizen, while steadfastly preserving the integrity and credibility of the electoral process here. We must embrace the transformative power of technology to enhance transparency, efficiency and public trust, while remaining vigilant and prepared to address emerging challenges. At the same time, we must create greater opportunities for women, for our youth, indigenous communities, persons with disabilities, and other unrepresented or underrepresented groups to participate fully in the democratic life of the country. Most importantly, we must deepen cooperation amongst election management bodies across the world. The challenges we face may differ in form, but our commitment to democracy is universal. By sharing knowledge, exchanging best practices, and learning from one another's experiences, we can build institutions that are more resilient, they are more innovative, and responsive to the needs of our people. Together, let us ensure that democracy continues to inspire hope, strengthen human dignity, and remain a powerful force for peace, progress, and inclusive development across our country and across the world. So, ladies and gentlemen, democracy has endured through the centuries in our country because each generation chose not merely to inherit it, but strengthen it. That responsibility now rests with us. Let this conference reaffirm our shared commitment to ensuring the democratic institutions remain worthy of the trust which has been reposed in us by our people. Before I conclude, I would like to place on record my sincere appreciations for the dedicated efforts of the entire team at Nirvachan Bhavan under the leadership of Shri Pawan Senji, our Chief Electoral Officer. I also congratulate every officer, official, researcher and member of the team who has contributed to this very important endeavor. So thank you very much for the productive deliberations. We have had the privilege of listening to 6 experts who have given they have given a format in which they perceive how things are going. And I fully agree that everything is not hunky-dory and rosy as it should be, but that's how we survive. India has been a nation amidst chaos, and it has risen because of chaos. And I think chaos is an essential part of our whole system. As long as there is chaos, there is a way. If there is no chaos, we may all probably become very dull and drab. So, I thank all of you to participate today in this discussion. we have heard 6 specialists on what they think the way the electoral process goes on in our country. Well, it may not be the best process or the most refined process, but I think it suits the Indian mind and the Indian people. We love it and we want to make it even better. So thank you very much today for gathering here and sharing your views with us. I hope there are more discussions like this which happen in this remote state, and so that it brings us into the mainstream and also understand the dynamics of how the country progresses and how we chart our way forward in this wonderful time of what our Prime Minister describes as the golden period. And I am sure by 24 we would be somewhere near the target that he has given us. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It was a pleasure listening to everyone. I wish we had more time to discuss, but then we are a large gathering here, and I'm sure we'll have such sessions more in the future. Thank you very much. Jai Hind. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, Honorable Governor, the chair of today's conference. Sir, your insightful remarks and your presence alone has added immense depth to today's conference, today's deliberation, and our heartfelt thanks once again, Honorable Sir. And to conclude,
before we go for sir vote of thanks, with your permission, sir, I would like to show one 5-minute video, sir, which on the international conference which we had in New Delhi. Video, please.
The Election Commission of India hosted the India International Conference on Democracy and Election Management 2026 from 21st to 23rd January 2026, the biggest global conference of its kind on democracy and election management. Held at Bharat Mandapam, New Delhi, IICDEM 2026 brought together delegates from 42 election management bodies, ambassadors and high commissioners from 27 countries, and experts from over 70 national institutions, creating a high-level platform for global exchange on the future of elections. The summit started with a formal reception where heads of delegations were welcomed by Chief Election Commissioner Shri Gyanesh Kumar, along with election commissioners Dr. Sukhbir Singh Sandhu and Dr. Vivek Joshi. The proceedings of the conference started with the inaugural session, where the Honorable Commission,
one of the largest exercise on
of international idea. Speaking at the conference, Election Commissioner Dr. Sukhbir Singh Sandhu talked about the importance of elections across the globe.
Across continents, cultures and political systems, elections remain the most powerful expression of popular sovereignty.
On the sidelines of the conference, the Honorable Commission held over 40 bilateral meetings with heads of delegations, deepening cooperation, sharing innovations, and strengthening partnerships. India also offered collaboration on technology platforms and training support through triple IDEM, reinforcing a commitment to practical, long-term capacity building. Among the standout moments of the summit was the launch of ECI Net, ECI's one-stop digital platform integrating 40-plus apps and portals into one seamless platform. ECI Net is designed to strengthen transparency and trust with cybersecurity at its core. Speaking at the launch of ECI Net, Election Commissioner Dr. Vivek Joshi talked about the use of technology in strengthening public confidence in the electoral system.
Our technology will continue to strengthen
the electoral integrity while ensuring easy, secure and equitable access to voter information, reinforcing public confidence in the democratic process.
Across the conference, 36 thematic groups were held. These were led by chief electoral officers and supported by leading academic institutions and domain experts. These sessions focused on deliberations on global electoral themes, standards and best practices covering areas from electoral roll integrity to campaign finance. Delegates also attended an EVM demonstration, offering a hands-on look at India's electronic voting machine process and procedures, implemented and scaled across democracies. IICDEM 2026 concluded with the unanimous adoption of the Delhi Declaration 2026. A shared roadmap anchored on 5 pillars: purity of electoral rolls, conduct of elections, research and publications, use of technology, and training and capacity building, and a commitment to review progress and reconvene at IIDEM, New Delhi in December 2026. In his closing remarks at the valedictory session, CEC Shri Gyanesh Kumar talked about India's willingness to collaborate with the election management bodies for capacity building and technology.
India will be willing to have the exchange programs of electoral staff from your countries and as well as our countries. India will also be willing to share its technology in all sectors of the electoral process with each one of you present here.
The 3-day conference established a forward-looking roadmap for global electoral cooperation and reaffirmed a shared commitment to strengthening democratic institutions worldwide.
Ladies and gentlemen, with that engaging video issued by IIDM ECI, we have come to the end of today's program. And to conclude this conference, I would like to invite Sir Liken Koyu, Joint Chief Electoral Officer of Arunachal Pradesh, to propose the vote of thanks. Koyu sir is a 2003 batch officer of Arunachal Pradesh Civil Service and is associated with Department of Election since 2018. Sir is also a recipient of State Award for Excellence in Public Administration as well as a gold medalist under the National Award for E-Governance. Sir, may I request you to propose the vote of thanks?
Honorable Governor of Arunachal Pradesh, Honorable Chairman, Administrative Reforms Commission, Electoral Officer, Arunachal Pradesh, distinguished guests, esteemed members from ECI and IIIDM, officers from Office of the Chief Electoral Officers of various states and UTs, district election officers, esteemed speakers and participants. A very good evening to all of you. As the Joint Chief Electoral Officer of Arunachal Pradesh, it is my absolute privilege to propose the vote of thanks as we conclude the remarkable international conference on ballot access by political parties and candidates. First and foremost, on behalf of the Office of the Chief Electoral Officer, Arunachal Pradesh, I would like to express our deepest gratitude to the Honorable Governor of Arunachal Pradesh. We thank you, sir, for chairing this session here at the conference hall, Lok Bhavan in Itanagar, and for delivering such an inspiring keynote address to close our session. I would also like to thank Honorable Chairman, Administrative Reforms Commission, for joining us today in spite of his busy schedule. Our heartfelt appreciation goes to our esteemed speakers who have traveled from districts and various prestigious institutions to share their profound knowledge with us today. Yashaswini B, DC is coming, and Professor Chandrasur Singh from Hindu College, Delhi, for their thought-provoking dive into trust and democratic resilience, electoral management and political representation. Kunal Yadav, DC Longding, and Professor Rohit Dwivedi from IIM Shillong for their excellent presentations on diagnosing and institutionalizing electoral resilience from democratic stress points to model standards. Angad Mehta, SP K.E. Panyor, and Professor Bandana Mishra from JN for thoroughly explaining the concepts of strengthening electoral democracy, international norms, comparative practices, and standards for inclusive participation. We would like to express our deepest appreciation to the Election Commission of India, an international idea whose vital support was instrumental in realizing this conference. We are equally grateful to IIIDM for their expert guidance and to Rajiv Gandhi University, Arunachal Pradesh for their steadfast collaboration and partnership. I also extend my sincere thanks to all district election officers and distinguished guests for joining this conference. I want to extend my deepest gratitude to our wonderful audience for their enthusiastic participation during the open discussions and interaction segment. Your engagement is what truly makes a democracy and a conference like this thrive. A special note of thanks goes to the officers from the Office of the Chief Electoral Officers of various states and UTs. Thank you for adapting to the virtual format and enriching our sessions with your digital presence today. Lastly, my sincere thanks go out to the officers and staff of Lok Bhavan for their support. I am equally grateful to the Director of Information and Public Relations, Director Doordarshan Itanagar, and Director of All India Radio Itanagar for taking today's program to a wider audience through their live coverage. Thank you all for being here this Friday afternoon. Have a wonderful evening ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. With that, we have come to the end of today's conference. I would like to thank each one of you, those who are present in this hall and those who have joined us online. Have a pleasant evening. Thank you.
Now, on behalf of Honorable Governor, I would request you to join us for a cup of tea in Siddharth Hall.